Marcus Chen had always prided himself on being adaptable. 3 tours as a communications specialist in the Terran Defense Corps, 2 degrees in xenolinguistics, and a natural curiosity about alien cultures had made him the perfect candidate for the interspecies cultural exchange program. What he hadn't expected was Zara. The Vulpine female stood barely 5 feet tall, her russet fur immaculately groomed, and her amber eyes sparkling with mischief as she introduced herself at the spaceport on Kepler 442b. Her pointed ears twitched, with barely contained excitement, and her fluffy tail swished behind her in what Marcus would later learn was the Vulpine equivalent of a pleased grin. "You must be my human roommate," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to make every word sound like a song. "I am Zara Veil Dancer of the Northern Territories. I have studied your species extensively." Marcus extended his hand for a shake, a gesture he'd been briefed was acceptable to Vulpines. Instead of taking it, Zara stepped closer and pressed her small, warm palm against his chest, directly over his heart. Her eyes widened. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Your cardiac rhythm increases when surprised. Human stress responses are remarkably similar to those we experience during other activities." The next 6 months of the exchange program proved to be an exercise in cultural confusion and mounting tension that had nothing to do with interspecies diplomacy. Zara, it turned out, was a behavioral xenopsychologist specializing in human social patterns. She approached their cohabitation with the scientific enthusiasm of a researcher and the playful energy of someone who found her subject matter endlessly entertaining. "Marcus," she would say, appearing silently behind him as he worked at his desk, "I have observed that humans require significantly more personal space than Vulpines. Yet your pupils dilate when I breach this boundary. Are you experiencing threat, response, or attraction response?" She had a habit of asking these questions while standing close enough that he could smell the subtle, spicy scent that seemed to cling to all Vulpines, something like cinnamon and starlight that made his brain short-circuit. "It's complicated," Marcus would reply, trying to focus on his reports about Vulpine agricultural techniques, while she leaned over his shoulder to read his screen. "Ah," Zara would nod sagely, her whiskers twitching. "Human mating rituals often involve the pretense of disinterest. I have read about this phenomenon." The real trouble began during the 3rd week, when Zara discovered human cooking shows. She became obsessed with something called romantic dinner preparation and insisted on implementing what she learned. Marcus would return from his daily seminars at the cultural center to find their shared kitchen filled with the aroma of exotic dishes, and Zara wearing what she informed him was human courtship attire, which appeared to be an oversized sweater that hung off one shoulder and pants that hugged her small frame in ways that made Marcus forget how to form coherent sentences. "I have prepared sustenance," she would announce, presenting elaborate meals with the pride of someone unveiling a masterpiece. "The human entertainment program suggests this is an appropriate bonding activity between potential mates." "We're not potential mates," Marcus would protest weakly, even as he accepted the perfectly prepared meal. "We're exchange participants. This is professional." Zara's ears would flatten slightly, a sign of confusion he'd learned to recognize. "But you consume the food I prepare. You compliment my efforts. Your body language indicates pleasure in my company. These are all indicators of successful courtship according to my research." The breaking point came during the 4th month, at the intercultural festival that marked the halfway point of their exchange program. Marcus had been looking forward to the event, a chance to demonstrate human cultural contributions and learn about other species' traditions. He hadn't expected Zara to spend 3 hours preparing what she called optimal human-attracting presentation. She emerged from her room wearing a dress that seemed to shimmer like starlight, her fur brushed to impossible softness, and a small crown of local flowers that made her look like something from a fairy tale. The ensemble was completed by a pendant that hung just above her heart, a small crystal that pulsed with soft light. "The research indicates that humans find formal attire and symbolic jewelry appealing," she explained, noticing his stare. The crystal is programmed to match my cardiac rhythm. It glows brighter when I am emotionally stimulated. Throughout the festival, Marcus watched the pendant's glow intensify whenever Zara laughed at his jokes, touched his arm during conversations, or caught him looking at her. By the evening's end, it was blazing like a tiny sun. Your courtship displays are very effective, she informed him as they walked home under the alien constellations. My physiological responses have been most pronounced. Marcus stopped walking. Zara, this isn't a courtship. I'm not trying to court you. Her ears drooped and the pendant's light dimmed noticeably. I do not understand. Have I misinterpreted the data? Your behavior patterns suggest significant interest in pair bonding. Looking down at her confused, hurt expression, Marcus realized that somewhere between the impromptu cooking lessons, late-night discussions about interspecies relations, and her earnest attempts to understand human behavior, something had changed. Maybe, he said carefully. The problem isn't that you've misinterpreted the data. Maybe the problem is that I've been misinterpreting what I want. Zara's ears perked up and her tail began its pleased swishing motion. Are you suggesting that your courtship displays have been unconscious? This would indicate that human pair bonding instincts are stronger than your conscious behavioral controls. Marcus laughed, a sound that made her pendant flare brightly. Something like that, yes. Then my research has been successful, Zara declared, stepping closer until she could place her palm over his heart again. Human emotional responses are remarkably easy to decode once one learns the proper methodology. As Marcus looked down at his brilliant, beautiful, impossibly persistent roommate, he had to admit that maybe the Vulpine exchange program had taught him more about himself than he'd ever expected to learn. So, he said, offering her his arm as they continued toward home, what does your research say about the success rate of interspecies relationships? Zara's ears twitched with what he now recognized as barely contained laughter. The sample size has been quite limited, she replied. I believe additional data collection will be necessary. The pendant at her throat pulsed with the warm, steady light of two hearts beating in perfect synchronization.